"It's only Cass playing her pump organ," Mom said. "Go in and introduce yourself, Lars. You're the one she's most anxious to see. Besides, I have a surprise for her I have to dig out." Suddenly, I wasn't too keen about walking into that creepy old place by myself. Swallowing hard, I marched to the door and tried the handle. It didn't budge. Dad came up and set down a couple of suitcases. "Darn, she's pulled in the latch string. She'll never hear the knocker over the sound of that organ. Run around the front door, Lars. See if that string's out. Just give it a pull." He headed back to the car where Mom was rummaging through the trunk. I trudged around to the front door and tugged on the leather thong hanging out beneath the door handle. Slowly, the old wooden door creaked open. Inside, candlelight flickered from a candelabra on a pump organ that did look like Captain Nemo's. My great aunt sat playing at the keyboard, her feet vigorously working the pedals below. I crossed over and timidly touched her on the shoulder. Startled, she shrieked so loudly that I echoed a pretty respectable squawk myself. Aunt Cass ratcheted herself around on the organ bench, and I got a good look at her. Except for the color of her face, she looked exactly like the witch in The Wizard of Oz. I noticed her hand was over her heart as if she planned to say the Pledge of Allegiance, but she exclaimed, "My, but you took me by surprise, young man. I presume you are George?" "Why, no, my name's Lars," I stammered. She waved away my words. Yes, of course. But I prefer to call you, George. George for short." Not knowing what else to say, I asked if I could try the organ. She nodded. "You'll find it better exercise than any newfangled Nautilus machine," she said, pursing her lips. I wondered if Captain Nemo would agree. Just then, my mother came running in, looking alarmed and sounding breathless. "What was all that screaming?" she asked. "We took each other aback," Aunt Cass said. "A good beginning. This George promises to be as much fun as your brother. Now give me a good hug, Sandra. It's about time you came back to Penncroft Farm." While they were hugging, Dad came in loaded with luggage. "Here's what you were looking for, Sandra," he said, handing her a wrapped box. Mom took the package and gave it to Aunt Cass. "I've been meaning to give you this for a long time." "You shouldn't waste your money on me," my great aunt declared. Mom shook her head slowly. "I didn't." Aunt Cass unwrapped the package. Inside was a wooden toy, a sort of cup with a stick with a ball connected to it by a leather cord. She stared at it without saying a word, then deftly flipped the ball into the cup. "I don't understand," she said, turning to gaze at Mom. "Why did you bring this to me?" "When George—" Mom's voice choked up. She cleared her throat and went on. "After George was killed in Vietnam, all his personal effects were sent to me. This old cup and ball came with his other stuff." "But why didn't you give it to one of your boys, Sandra?" "Because I remembered you didn't just give it to George. He had to earn it in that historical treasure hunt of yours." Aunt Cass's face wrinkled into a smile. "Yes, that was quite a challenge for George, but he finally figured out the hiding place on his own. All it took was the right spirit. That's all he'd ever say, the rat. He was so smug about keeping it secret. After that, I never could find him when we played hide and seek. Must have been a great hiding place." "Yes, indeed," Aunt Cass said softly. "I don't suppose you'd tell me where it is, would you?" asked my mother hopefully. "I never told anybody, Sandra. It has to be discovered, just like your brother did." Aunt Cass replied, an unreadable look on her face. There was nothing unreadable about Mom's expression. Her disappointment was obvious. "Well, anyway, I brought your toy back to where it belongs, Cass," she said, and went out. Aunt Cass flipped the ball into the cup 2 more times. Itching to try it, I stretched out my hand without thinking. My father must have noticed. "Maybe there's someone else here who might like a chance to earn the thing," he said. Aunt Cass's faded blue eyes studied me intently. "I have only one thing to say to you, George," she said, and paused. I guess I expected her to say something about my doing a treasure hunt like Uncle George. Instead, she frowned and sternly asked, "Why didn't you pick more peas?" There was a kind of strangled choke of laughter from Dad, but he only asked if Aunt Cass had been upstairs looking out the window. "Lars thought he saw you waving from the bedroom window as we drove in," he said, sounding amused. "Oh, he did he?" Aunt Cass raised one eyebrow and gave me a funny look, as if she were trying to guess what size I wore or something. Then she turned back to Dad. "Oh, Eric, you know I seldom go up these stairs any more." "That's what I told him. He must be so sleepy he's seeing things. Come on, Lars. I'll show you the way to bed," Dad said. I was too tired to argue. Silently, I followed him up the narrow staircase and down the dark hallway to my room. I went straight to the window. A shade fluttered a little in the breeze, but there was nothing faintly resembling the guy on the Pioneer 10 picture. Dad joined me at the window. "You must have seen the curtains blowing behind the shade," he said. He pulled down the sash. "Can't leave this open. Probably get pretty cold tonight. After all, it's almost Halloween. Now hop into bed as fast as you can, Lars. See you in the morning." Wait a minute, Dad. Why did Aunt Cass ask me about picking peas? Does she have all her marbles? I asked.
"Every one,"
Dad chuckled.
"She was referring to the last time we were here. She had a bumper crop of peas in her garden, and sent you and Peter out there with big buckets to pick some. Peter kept at it, but you came back in a couple of minutes with only 2 peas in your bucket. She couldn't understand why anybody would let little things like heat, bug, or a very wet diaper get in the way of pea picking."
"I'll pick peas for her now if she likes," I offered nobly. "Just as long as I don't have to eat any." There was nothing I hated more than peas.
"I'm sure she'll be happy to hear that. Good night, Lars,"
Dad said and went out. Quickly, I got ready for bed. As I climbed under the canopy, I glanced up, remembering my can-o-p pun. With a smirk, I started to slide under the covers, but my feet made it only part way down, straining my knees somewhere in the vicinity of my chin. I'd been bamboozled by Aunt Cass.